Konnichiwa.
Welcome to the Jandals in Japan podcast.
Kia ora, Catherine.
Konnichiwa, Jane.
We have got some very cool feedback to share today about the Jandals in Japan podcast.
It's amazing where people are listening from and who is getting inspired by this podcast.
Yeah.
We're loving it. Thank you so much for that. And I just want to share one. Can I share that?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Well, we heard from Austin in Italy.
Italy.
Italy, people. Italy.
So cool.
Italia. He said this: I've recently discovered your Jandals in Japan podcast, and I am loving listening to your entire catalogue, starting from episode 1. Oh, as a Kiwi who spent several years living in Japan, it's both a wonderful trip down memory lane and an insightful discovery of business and culture in Japan today. Wow. Thank you, Austin, so much. That is so cool.
Very, very cool. Hope you don't give up before you get to episode 78 or whatever this is.
Yes. And Jane, you've got somebody else too who's been listening in.
Yeah, I actually got a message from Taiki, who's studying at university in New Zealand, and he said that he came across Jandals in Japan and found it really useful because he wants to know more about the Kiwi business culture and customs to gain insights for himself that could help strengthen business relationships between Japan and New Zealand. So
Cool.
here we have a podcast that we are creating for New Zealanders mostly, but Japanese people also finding it really useful. So there you go.
That's brilliant. Wow. Wonderful. I love it. And a big shout out to everybody who voted for us in the New Zealand Podcast Awards this year. We really thank you for that. Many of you came up to me at events recently and told me you had personally voted. So I want to thank our friends and family in the community who did that for us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we were not chosen this year, but we feel very supported by the Jandals in Japan community. So thank you so much for always sacrificing your email addresses.
And people have let us know through messages since then that they really support us and way to go, and that Jandals is still number 1 for them. Thanks so much for that. Well, today's episode, Jane, well, let's get into that because we're joined by someone who's at the heart of one of New Zealand's most iconic companies, Fonterra. And we're talking with Bryn Rowden, who is the Corporate Communications General Manager for Fonterra's North Asia region, covering both Japan and South Korea. In today's conversation, we talk about what it means to champion sustainability in one of Japan's most discerning markets, how Fonterra continues to strengthen this New Zealand-Japan connection, and all the lessons that Bryn has learned from his years of leading teams here in the culture, through the language, and in this amazing business landscape.
You're going to love it. Let's hear it from Bryn. Kia ora, Bryn. Welcome to the Jandals in Japan podcast. Great to have you on the show today.
Kia ora, Jane. Catherine, great to be here.
So we like to start with our warm-up question. So tell us about one experience you have had in Japan that blew your mind. Go.
Wow, that's a tough question, Jane. Whew.
I think probably some of like the festivals like Summer Sonic and Fuji Rock, and probably those. They're pretty out there, pretty
And
cool.
is that something different to what you might experience at a summer festival in New Zealand?
The main ones I've been to in New Zealand was the Big Day Out, so I guess it's kind of similar, and I just like those kind of festivals, but just I guess the scale of Fuji Rock, for example, was just on a different magnitude, and just all the kind of like the peripheral events. It's not just the music; it's kind of the entertainment and the yatai, and just the amount of, I guess, effort that goes into making an exceptional experience.
To the yatai, you're talking about the stalls and the food options.
Yeah, a level beyond what you get in, I guess, New Zealand or probably most other countries.
Wow, thank you. That was not what I was expecting. How about you, Catherine? A experience in Japan that blew your mind?
Well, I'm going to stick with the music genre. Thank you, Bryn. Is concerts in Japan, inside stadiums or in the Tokyo Dome. I have not been able to see the amazing artists, global artists, anywhere else but Tokyo. So Bruno Mars, Taylor Swift, Sting about 8 times, Madonna, like people who you may not even fancy, like they may not be on top of your list, but to see them live as entertainers, brilliant. So those things in Japan so far have blown my mind completely.
Yeah, and everybody comes here, right? And then they do like 5 or 6 concerts in different places. And so it's not like New Zealand where you have to wait 5 years for anybody to come.
Only in Auckland, right? Only in
Yeah.
Auckland, or
Yeah,
maybe
we're
maybe
very
Dunedin.
lucky here with the concert thing. So maybe time a visit to Japan with your favorite artists coming through. But good luck
Sure.
Mm.
getting tickets because you're in competition with a
And
lot
it's
of people for them, that's for sure.
yes, it's a lottery draw too, isn't it? So Jane, you must have something. What's blown your mind here?
On the festival note, but mine is more along the traditional festival note. I was invited to take part in a festival for a shrine and to help carry the portable shrine around the town. And for this one, I actually got to go inside the shrine and sit next to the portable shrine that they were going to put the god into. And they had the ceremony where the priest does his thing, and then they go out the back and get the god out of the where the god lives in
Get
his
the
own little
God.
house. Yep. And then they bring it and they put it in the shrine, and I was sitting right next to it for that. And you're supposed to avert your eyes. You're not supposed to look. They have a bit of a sheet up, but I was sort of like out the corner of my eye, what's happening? Very, very lucky for a woman to be even allowed near it when that's happening, because generally it's all done by men for various reasons. And then we took the god out for a blat round the neighborhood, as you do in the shrine, and it was just an amazing experience. At the end of the day, I felt like I was like part of the town because of what I'd done and met all the people, the local people, and we all carried this really heavy shrine together up and down stairs and nearly electrocuted ourselves on the power lines. It was a great time was had by
Great
all.
time. Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah.
I thought you were going to talk about meeting Winston Peters, but you didn't.
I did meet Winston Peters, but no, that's a story for another
Another
day.
day.
Yeah, you
Okay.
have to ask me about that another day.
Well, let's get into it. Bryn, we're so thankful for you saying yes to come on the Jandals in Japan podcast. You're at the heart of one of New Zealand's most iconic companies. It could even be the iconic company successfully doing business in Japan. You're the corporate communications general manager for Fonterra's North Asia region covering Japan and South Korea. And you lead everybody around who needs to know about sustainability. That's your middle name. You oversee stakeholder engagement. You just live and breathe Fonterra's sustainability story here in Japan and North Asia. And we really are looking forward to talking with you today about your role, how you are strengthening the New Zealand Japan relationship, and the lessons that you've personally learnt over the years as well. So let's go back a little while and tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Where were you born and raised in New Zealand? What brought you to Japan and how you ended up in Fonterra? Now, that's 3 questions all in one. So let's go back to your roots in New Zealand first.
Sure. So I'm born in Auckland from the North Shore originally. Northcote is where I'm from. Lived there for the first, I think, it's about 12 years. And then my family moved up to Coatesville, which is a little bit north. It's kind of out towards Albany and QMU, etc.
Right. And where'd you go to school? Come on, I have to ask you that. I'm from Christchurch, so we always ask this question.
Yep. Sunnybray Primary School, and then
Oh,
Te Kapuna Intermediate, and then
oh,
Westlake Boys for high school, and
oh.
then Auckland University.
What did you study at Auckland?
I started with a conjoint in law and Bachelor of Arts.
You did
Didn't
law. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I didn't finish. I didn't finish the law degree. Studied Japanese as well for
Oh, you did
the
Japanese there.
yeah.
Oh, lovely. So you got your sort of interest in Japanese from Auckland University days.
Yeah, well, when I started in high school, we had to choose. We had electives, and there was a requirement to study a foreign language. So
I
my
see.
school, I think we had Latin, French, and Japanese were the options, and we had to choose one of those. So I was kind of, well, at Latin, I was kind of, oh, it's cool, but like, you can't use it.
Can't use
So
it.
I was kind of torn up between French and Japanese, and I asked my mum, like, what do you think's better? And she said she'd studied French. And apart from some time living in New Caledonia, she said she never got to use it. I was like, oh, you lived in New Caledonia? I didn't know that. Like, that sounds like a good place to
What?
use it. But um, anyway, I was kind of like, okay, I'll do Japanese because she said, at the time, like it was still kind of like the bubble hadn't quite finished. One of our biggest trading partners, she's like, it's going to be good for your future. So I thought, yeah, okay.
Mums know, don't they?
And I just read the book Shogun, the novel that the recent TV series is based on. So I was like, oh, this Japan place seems kind of cool. So I chose Japanese, and I was really bad at it, like really terrible. So after the first year, when we were choosing electives for our second year, I was like, oh, maybe I don't want to keep doing this. I talked to my teacher, and normally they try and convince you to keep going, but she was just like, yeah, maybe it's for the best.
Oh, Bryn. Oh, that's crushing.
I ended up picking it again because I guess like the other subjects I was even worse at. So
Mm.
picked Japanese again, and it just clicked in my second year. I don't know
Ah,
what, but it just became interesting for me, and I think everything started to kind of fall into place.
there you go.
So yeah, I started to love it, and then over time, I started to get a little bit bored with it again. Just the fact that it wasn't practical. Like I didn't know any Japanese people. I never got to use it. But then leading into my final year in high school, Westlake has a sister city in Japan near Nagoya called Bisei, and they had their 40th anniversary. So there was an exchange, and a lot of kids from my school, we went across for 2 weeks to Bisei. And I just really loved it again. So it's kind of like reignited the passion. And my teacher at the time, she said, oh, how about an exchange to a Japanese high school for a year? So I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. So I spent a year in Kyoto in a Japanese high school. Mm.
Ooh, you managed to
Wow.
Mm.
suffer those hot summers in Kyoto. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it? Because the language sits there and you've got it in New Zealand, but how do you use it? And it's a living thing, isn't it? So coming
Yeah.
here actually brought it to life for you and your interest. There you are studying law and doing arts, and somewhere along the track there with your Japanese, Fonterra pops up. How did that come to be?
Yeah, I ended up doing a year in a Japanese university on an exchange, the Mombasho Scholarship. And I guess when I finished, I went back to New Zealand and I did the JET program after that. So it's kind of like
Oh,
that was, pretty common at the time to kind of like go study Japanese and then do the JET program. So after the JET program, so I spent a couple of years in Kumamoto. It's like amazing place to live if you get the chance. I definitely recommend visiting Kumamoto down in Kyushu. So I went back to New Zealand and I needed, I guess, my first job. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought maybe something in a corporate just to kind of like try it out and see, whether it was a good match or not. So there was a role with Fonterra, and they were looking for Japanese speakers to work on handling their export orders to the Japan market. Fonterra had been formed while I was in Japan. So I'd come back and, I was kind of just out of a loop, back then, like, so this is like 2001. And I didn't even really know what Fonterra was. I'd kind of heard the name, but, I knew Anchor and Mainland, etc., but not really Fonterra. Yeah, I started with Fonterra exporting orders to Japan. And that was in the head office in Auckland. And then after about a year and a half, a position came up in the Japan office. And so that was more on the operation side, the logistics side of the business. So I came across there. And I've actually spent the majority of my time in the operations side of the business, market access, logistics, etc. So it's only been in the last probably 5 or 6 years because I've been in the Tokyo office for 16 years now. So I've had a few different roles. So previous to my current role in corporate comms, I was in corporate planning. So it was more like a strategy. It was kind of a combination of what I do now, but with less focus on marketing and PR and comms, etc.
those export orders must have been quite interesting in teaching you quite a lot about Japanese business or the way to do business. Is there anything you remember from those days that still sticks with you? processing orders, but the way that they were probably accepted by the Japan side or pushed back on, for example, anything like that that might have come up.
Yeah, the attention to detail is amazing. And on the Japan side, like, so for example, if we would send something across, if anything was in any way different to previous orders, it would immediately be picked up on the Japan side. So if, there was any minor change to the packaging, they would say, well, it's not the same product you sent before.
Right.
Ooh.
So we might say, essentially it's the same product, just the packaging has changed. But from the Japanese perspective, no, it's a different product because something has changed. And if you didn't inform us of that change, then what else has changed inside that, is more important that you didn't even inform us about. So like the importance of making sure that everything was communicated in advance was something that I learned from that.
That would have stuck with you forever. Yeah. Goodness me. So I guess there's lots of things that you were learning then, but there must be perhaps when you think about now Fonterra in Japan, it's such a famous name in New Zealand. However, in Japan, maybe a lot of consumers here don't realize how much New Zealand dairy or protein products are in their daily lives. Are you able to give us some surprising examples that people listening here may not even be aware of?
I think probably people are not that aware of how much dairy is used in medical nutrition in Japan.
No, I did not know.
So particularly, the protein is an important component in medical nutrition. In Japan, with its aging population, there's a large demand for these products.
What does that look like? Yeah.
And is
Medical
it
nutrition.
inside a product? Is it inside a needle that's injected? Is it in the bags that people have those intravenous? What does it look like? I have no idea. Tell me, Bryn.
Yeah, so it can be used in different applications and different delivery methods. A lot of it, our product goes into the ready-to-drink formats. But yeah, it's a protein component that helps with, healthy aging or helps as, you get older and your muscles decline, etc. It becomes really important to have good quality protein.
So, in the average person in Japan's day, they must come across Fonterra products without knowing. What are some of the ones that we can find in our local supermarkets and things?
Yeah, so in the average day, so I guess, you'd wake up. So first thing, breakfast, Japanese bread, it's very kind of soft and sweet. So it has a dairy component generally. If you're butter on toast, that could be our butter. Or if you're using margarine, it could be our dairy ingredients. A lot of the yogurts that are popular in Japan contain our proteins,
Mm.
which I think probably something not a lot of people know about.
Interesting.
If you're putting milk on cereal, that's not ours because no liquid milk,
Right.
which I think
No liquid milk. There we go.
no liquid milk.
Exclusion.
Yeah,
And that would be why I think it was my sister came to visit and was like, this milk smells different. And I'm
yeah,
like, okay, does it? She noticed. Yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah. I think you do notice. Some people will notice a difference. Okay, so you're off to work. You'll stop by the convenience store, the conveni, grab your conveni coffee. So if you want to use those little milk fresheners, the creamers,
Yeah,
maybe a little,
little pots of cream.
depending on the conveni, yeah, that's often ours. Or if you're going to buy like the coffee off the shelf, the canned coffee or the
Yeah.
pet bottles, if it's not black coffee, it's quite likely got our ingredients in it.
Huh.
Wow.
Otherwise, so if if you're going to buy a bento for work, so maybe like a Hamburg bento with cheese on top, quite likely it's our cheese. Or the burritos, quite likely our cheese. Or otherwise, like say, for example, if you went to lunch, decided to eat out. So I can't really name the names, but for example, a famous gyudon franchise, they're famous for their cheese gyudon, so the chigyu, if you're a fan.
Oh, I've never not had that. Chigyu. Ah.
Yeah, it's quite a popular product. So the chigyu with the cheese on top, or maybe a famous hamburger chain where, despite inflation, smiles are still free, often using our cheese.
Oh my goodness.
After work, if you go to the gym, you're probably going to use some protein powder afterwards, most likely. It's including Fonterra protein.
Mhm.
And then I guess, yeah, you'd go home and maybe relax with the wine, some processed cheese, which quite likely is our cheese as a natural cheese being used in it.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I'm hungry. Also, how interesting. An unexpected one just popped up there too, Jane.
Unexpected one.
Chigyu.
Chigyu. Yeah, I'm
Chigyu,
going to go and
Chigyu,
check out the Chigyu.
Chigyu, yeah.
Oh.
Well, I have to say, in the last few months, I have noticed that the cheese that I normally buy is now being marketed as grass-fed on the front. It's got pictures of cows and green grass, and you look on the back and it's from New Zealand. So I'm guessing possibly you guys or one of our dairy companies. And this is becoming a marketing point of difference in Japan, the grass-fed aspect.
Yes. So I guess, we're a B2B company. So how do we market our products without having really a consumer products, to market? And we have had a few in the past, Anchor and Capity, etc. But with the sale of those brands in the very near future, will be entirely B2B. So that was my challenge, like, what do we market to consumers? We thought about, what's the unique aspect of Fonterra and New Zealand dairy that differentiates ourselves from everyone else, and the fact that it's grass-fed and all the different, positive aspects of grass farming, the fact that it means that the cows can live outdoors in a way that's closest to their natural behavior, eating grass, which is what they're supposed to do. The fact that it's because you're not using imported feed for the most part, you've got a lower carbon footprint. So New Zealand has one of the lowest, if not lowest, carbon footprints for dairy.
Yeah, that's quite amazing, isn't it? But I wanted to move on to ask you about the Hokkaido Dairy Project, or project, depending what you're saying. So, Bryn, tell us about this amazing project, because we know it's dear to your heart, bringing New Zealand farming practices to Hokkaido, the northern island of Japan. How did all of this start?
Yeah, so the Japanese dairy industry has been in decline for the last 20 plus years. So milk production, it's dropping every year, and a lot of it's to do with the fact that farmers, on average, they're in their 60s. When they retire, no one wants to replace them because the Japanese dairy industry, it's confinement dairy farming. So, cows spend their entire life in barns, and there's a lot of work that goes into feeding the cows, to cleaning the cow sheds, etc. Plus, they're not making much money at this point. So for young people, if you said, well, here's an industry you can go in and you work really hard and you'll have no time off, but on the other hand, you'll make no money. That's not really something that's very attractive to young people.
No, not very attractive.
So we looked at Hokkaido, and you have dairy farming in Honshu and different parts of Japan, but generally there's not enough free land for grass farming to be viable. But when we looked at Hokkaido, you have all this space that can be used for grazing. So we thought, well, Fonterra has all this, we know more about grass farming than anyone else in the world. We can take that expertise and teach, Japanese farmers how to grass farm and, have all these benefits. Japanese dairy in the past, it had been all about just maximizing production and trying to make as much milk as possible. And to do that, like buying lots of imported feed, mostly from the US.
Oh, I see.
And in the past, it was like cheap feed, but recently, the price of feed has gone up and up. It's not very profitable anymore for most farmers. Like about 80% of farmers who are, doing the traditional confinement farming are not making money. So we thought, if we can introduce the New Zealand style, so we started in 2014 with a feasibility study, and we worked with about 5 different farms to establish that, it was something that was feasible in Japan. And then we kind of thought that the project would finish in about 5 years. So we would, establish feasibility and say, well, over to you. But it's just gone from strength to strength. So 2025, we're still going. So we've been at it for 10 years now.
It's amazing. But it feels like, why would New Zealand want to do that? Why would a company want to do that? Because you've talked about decline, but the other side of the thing that comes up is that, well, isn't it competitive? Why would you want to help Japan? What's in it for you? But actually, it's deeper than that, I believe. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, some people will say that, like, if dairy declines in Japan, it means you can sell more dairy into Japan. And I mean, there is some truth in that. But we don't want to see a collapse of the Japanese dairy industry. A lot of our customers in Japan, they combine domestic dairy with dairy they buy from us. So, if it's not good for our customers, it's not good for us. So we want to do what we can to help the Japanese dairy industry. Like Fonterra has been doing business in Japan through the legacy companies for like 40, 50 years. So we see us as part of, the local community as well. So we want to, reach out, and we know that the New Zealand dairy grass-fed system will work in Hokkaido. So for us, it just seems, it's got various benefits in terms of sustainability, etc., for farmers there. So it feels like the right thing to do.
That's a good thing to talk about, is the sustainability, and also things that have surprised you from that project. Are there people actually deciding and desiring to work in dairy now, the younger people? Is that still to come, because it's, shall we say, only 10 years, but is that still on its way?
We definitely do see that. So we'll run grass farming schools, and we see like young couples that will come to the schools. And sometimes, they'll be from like Tokyo or Osaka. They're looking to move out to the countryside because they want to, work with animals, but they don't want to be like working with animals in sheds all day. They want to be outside with the animals. So we work with a local partner called Farm Age, who are like kind of local grass-fed consultants. So they're our project partners. And I was visiting their head office, which is, right out in the middle of the countryside in Hokkaido, for their 40th anniversary a couple months ago. And most of their staff are really young, and a lot of them have come from places like Tokyo and Sapporo, etc. So they're, young people who have chosen to go out and work in the countryside because, it's something that they believe in, where most other industries are struggling to find these young people.
That's very cool, and definitely surprising to hear that, yeah, young people want to be connected to the land and want to work in places like the middle of nowhere in Hokkaido. Anything else that surprised you from the project so far? Outcomes, results?
I think it's been really interesting to see the personality of the farmers reflected in their farm. So, for example, there's one farmer who, once he started grass farming, he married a vet, and he's become really passionate with animal welfare and improving, the health of his animals. So, for him, it's all about having the healthiest animals in Japan. Or you see farmers that are very like entrepreneurial, like one farmer that we work with, he's been grass farming before the project started, but he's more of a supporter of the project. And he, for example, has he calls it a milk sauna. So he's got a old shipping container, and he's converted into a sauna. And he's taken one side out, so it's a window, so you can like sit in the sauna and watch the sheep eating in the paddocks. And then he's now created like a kind of Airbnb out of containers as well. So you wake up and you've got cows just like walking past your window, and so it's very entrepreneurial for him.
Holy
That side of
cow.
it comes through for
Wow,
him, and then
amazing.
so
That is such
yeah.
fun.
So I think a lot of the farmers who are attracted to grass farming, they tend to be people who are like quite independent, and they want to do things their own way. So you can really see, I guess their personality kind of being reflected in the way they run their farms.
Amazing. Have you brought any of them down to New Zealand? Have they seen what goes on down at the home office?
Quite a few of them have, and they'll go down and they'll do something like that. They'll go down to learn about dairy farming, but then they'll also like work in, like, say, they'll cycle the length of the country. Um,
As you
they
do.
tend to be people, yeah. And that's
There's a
something
certain
that, the typical Japanese farmer can't do, because they only have like maybe 2 days of holiday per year on average. If you're working in
yeah,
a cow shed, because you can't just leave your cows if they're
no.
in a shed. You constantly have to be feeding them and cleaning up after them. So it's that work-life balance aspect, which is really, I think, attractive for a lot of the farmers that we work with.
Yeah, another farmer's also teaching New Zealand farming people in New Zealand things that they didn't know before. I mean, you could set up an Airbnb, people looking at cows and sheep. New Zealand might think, what do you mean? But actually, that could be quite fun. But is there something else that they're helping them with, and thinking a little bit differently about farming from the Japanese perspective?
Japan to New Zealand, I think probably in terms of like the grass farming management aspects. One interesting example is one of the farmers that we work with. So he had previously worked with Toyota. So he was, working in the factory, and then he tried dairy farming, but he wasn't doing very well until he decided to join our project. And what he's done is he'll take the grass farming principles that he's learned from us and combine them with the Toyota management principles.
Oh, that's so cool. How's that happening?
Mm.
So, like just in time and other principles.
Yeah, so part of it is kind of walking the floor, right? So every day he walks around his farm, with his rising plate meter, and he's, measuring how much grass. But he's also looking at, like, why do the cows prefer this part of the paddock, and why don't they like that part? And he'll start to do problem-solving exercises, and so he's constantly trying to make his farm better. It's very cool. So he won the Kurosawa Award. He's one of two of our farmers that we worked with to win that award, which is like the equivalent of the Farmer of the Year in Japan. So those are
Whoa.
definitely cool highlights of the
What do
project.
what do they get when they win?
I'm not quite sure if it comes with anything, but mostly I think the prestige of winning
Prestige,
it.
kudos.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Can I ask, is there any other areas in Japan where grass farming is happening or is possible, or is it not really possible in other parts?
There are parts. So, like Tochigi, for example, has a little bit of grass farming. I think Yamagata does, and then a little bit in Kyushu. Like if you go to, say, Kumamoto and go to like the onsen, like Mount Aso region, you'll see cows being grass fed there. So it does happen, but Hokkaido's really where the most potential is. It's probably maybe about 10% of dairy in Hokkaido now is grass fed at the moment.
So, Bryn, have you actually got out in the field yourself with the old gumboots on and done some milking or other things? Tell us.
Not milking per se, but I'll get up there a couple of times a year. So I've visited farms all over Hokkaido, which has been, a highlight, I think, for me. Once per year, I'll take a group of Fonterra Japan staff up to visit the farms. It tends to be like our newer staff. And for them, the fact that they're working for a dairy company, but when they're working in the Tokyo office, they're quite, I guess, divorced from actual dairy farming. So for them to see what New Zealand style grass farming is like, being able to go to Hokkaido and see these farms and see these farmers and how their life has changed.
I mean, it's amazing what Fonterra is actually doing in Japan to help so many areas, and we've just heard of a few there. But Game on English is another program that we've heard a little bit about, but perhaps, Bryn, you can go into it a bit more. And then I think also the alumni for that has been quite successful.
Yeah, that's our other big CSR initiative. That's also started in 2014. And so the idea was we would bring Japanese high school kids down to New Zealand for an exchange where they would spend their time learning English and playing rugby. And over time, we've incorporated more elements of sustainability learning and learning about New Zealand culture and Maori culture. And then we've seen, so for example, some of the kids who started in 2014, 2015, some of them have gone on to professional rugby careers. There's about 5 or 6 of them currently playing in League One, which is Japan's premier rugby competition.
Wow, that's so good, isn't it? Because the continuity's there from having learnt it on the program and now utilizing it, perhaps with the other foreign players, for example, right?
When we catch up with them or talk to the coach, they'll say the boys that did the Game on English, they tend to be the ones who really, when the Kiwi players come across, they form these good relationships and they act as a translator. So it really works into the whole team building side of things. I think the biggest success was one of the players made it to the Brave Blossoms, and he
Nice.
debuted last year against the Maori All Blacks. Harada Mamoru is his name, but he actually debuted as captain and he scored the first try in the match, so that was pretty cool.
Wow. So these are long-term plans, aren't they? They've been here for a long time, like
Yes.
2014. So many long-standing relationships that I don't think are broadly known in the community, but hopefully through sharing today and all the other things that you do, Bryn, as well. I know you're speaking at the Japan New Zealand Business Council conference and you're doing a lot of different things there to get the word out. But how has it been for you, though, with the Fonterra's approach to the Japanese market over the years? Has it evolved, especially since you've seen from when you joined through to now?
It's been a process of slow evolution. There hasn't been any huge fundamental shifts. I think, if anything, Fonterra itself has changed a lot more than Fonterra Japan has. And by that, I mean Fonterra, they've decided that they're going to divest of the consumer business and focus on that high value ingredients business. And a lot of that, for example, in Japan, that's what we've always done. So I feel that Fonterra has aligned itself with what has been successful in the Japan market.
That makes sense.
So over time, we've leaned more and more into that strength. So in particular, it's protein for healthy aging and active living. So Japan and South Korea, they have, the oldest population in the world, the oldest life expectancy, but it hasn't always been, I think, in the past, good quality old age.
Mm.
Mm.
So they talk about like a healthy like life expectancy as well. Like I know for me, and it's I think 72 in Japan. It's kind of your average, your life expectancy where you generally don't have any major health concerns. The younger generation, or the generation that's kind of probably moving into their retirement years now, they'll look at their parents and say, well, they lived a long time, but a lot of, they were bedridden, etc. They weren't that active. I don't want that for myself. So they understand a lot more the importance of quality protein and, using these healthy aging products
Mm.
to combat cognitive decline, mobility, the understanding of the importance of protein to stop muscle loss is like much better understood now by Japanese, I think.
How about for you personally? What's been really rewarding about these exchanges? Because I think it's enriched you on a personal level as well.
The CSR work is very rewarding because I think it's something where you feel that you're a small part of something much greater, and that the people you work with that go on these exchanges and they go on to do bigger and better things, and they pay it forward themselves. So over time, the power of the projects just, I guess, kind of snowballs. So being involved with that is really rewarding.
So, Bryn, how important is it having boots, or in the case of you, gum boots, on the field in Japan rather than just managing from New Zealand? What sort of tips would you have there for long-term relationship building and success in Japan as a Kiwi?
Yeah, the boots on the ground thing is incredibly important. So with Fonterra Japan, we have about 80 people in the Japan office.
Mm.
It's a full service offering. We have technical teams, we have logistics, market access, etc. And without that, I think your chance of success in Japan really diminishes. Having a local partner is really important. So we work with a JV, working with a Japanese company. So I think really you do need that. A lot of our competitors who don't, they will go through traders who provide like similar services, but they're not always able to communicate, the value proposition of the company. Right now, for example, I think when it comes to sustainability and being able to go out to customers and, clearly articulate the sustainability benefits that you can bring, that's something that we can do because we have people in market who can do that. Whereas, if you're just going through traders, they don't necessarily know, how to run these conversations. So
Yeah.
that's really important, I think.
Yeah, I guess that's related, but I was thinking the flip side of success here would be disasters that can be easily made by just tripping up a little bit. Is there anything you'd suggest there to avoid, or maybe even from personal experience, something that happened that has served you well from something that didn't quite go as you thought?
One mistake that Kiwi companies can make, and it depends on your product, but thinking that your product is automatically going to translate to success in Japan. That, just because it was successful in New Zealand and it might have done well in like the States or Australia, it's not necessarily going to translate exactly into success in Japan.
Mm.
So the idea that you need to, work with perhaps a local partner and make changes to your business approach or to your product to make sure that it suits, the local preferences is important. And that comes to like the marketing approach as well, because, good marketing in New Zealand might be very different to what sells in Japan.
Exactly. We often have conversations about how not crazy but wild Japanese commercials
Yeah.
are, and compared to New Zealand commercials, and which ones people prefer in my house. So yeah, there's definitely a certain way that Japan likes to be marketed to. Are there any trends that you've seen in Japan that Kiwi entrepreneurs could latch onto to build a business in Japan around, or something's coming up you think, oh, we should get on that wagon?
Guess when it comes to the quirky advertising, one thing that I would like to do if we weren't a B2B company was like to develop a mascot. So you
Ah,
see
Mm,
Zespri with the Kiwi brothers, and that
yes.
resulted in like some really great viral marketing. And I think something like that could be really cool to work on. You look at like Cookie Time and the way that they have their Cookie Time Cafe in Harajuku, etc. It's like those are good examples of bringing a Kiwi business to Japan and using something that's a little bit different, a little bit quirky, a little bit kawaii maybe, to market
Yeah.
your products. What we've been doing recently is our Fonterra Japan Instagram account. So if you know
Oh,
if you're interested, please follow.
Will
thank you. We
do.
will. Excellent.
So it started as just a corporate account and fairly dry, but we've tried to make it a little bit more fun and interesting. So we'll introduce how to use New Zealand dairy in various like Japanese, dishes, or if you go to this cafe in some part of Tokyo, you'll be able to try desserts using New Zealand grass-fed butter, etc.
Love
So
it. Oh,
yeah.
that sounds exciting. I'm
Mm.
trying to look. Oh, I can see it. Fonterra JP. I'm looking at it. What I can do two things at once. Search for Fonterra on Instagram as well as speak with you. But is there something else there, Bryn, that we haven't mentioned today that you had prepared that you wanted to speak about and share with us?
I think just getting back to how we choose to engage with consumers. So, because we're a B2B business, we had to really think what was unique about our business, and that's the fact that it's grass fed. We've been a lot of the events and, for example, our Instagram posts, etc. They're all kind of related to getting that message out, to letting consumers understand that the benefits of grass fed dairy, because we don't have any kind of brands or products to market. So we want consumers to associate New Zealand with grass-fed dairy.
Very good.
Any final reflections for us there, Bryn, about your time in Japan so far, or something that you're proud of or looking forward to achieving next?
What I'm probably most proud of in recent years is definitely the CSR work, for example, the Hokkaido project, and helping to make life better for farmers there. So, a lot of them, I think I mentioned that Japanese dairy farmers, they only have a couple of days of holiday per year. Where the farmers we've worked with, they've become more profitable, but they always mention that their work-life balance is so much better. They have time to spend with their families, they have time to spend on their hobbies and go fishing, etc. So I'm proud of that. And I think in the future, I want to work with our customers on the sustainability aspect and, help them with their sustainability journeys. It's quite new to them. They don't really know exactly the way forward when it comes to creating sustainability plans. So I think it's something that Fonterra can be of help with. So that's probably where the majority of my focus will be.
Fantastic. Well, that's been excellent. And what a lot we've learned today. Thank you so much, Bryn, for coming on the show. And you can now officially call yourself a Jandal in Japan.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Wow, I have a new view of Fonterra in Japan. So many things I did not know.
Exactly. Given it's a B2B company, we just opened up the shoji as to what they are doing here and all those amazing products that are in our daily life in Japan.
So many. Yeah.
Eye-opening completely. From bread and butter and bento burritos through to, coffee creamers and cheese and canned coffee. Amazing. That was very educational, and I'm pretty sure anyone listening would have just been, what? What? All of these things that I usually have in my daily life. Thank you to Fonterra in New Zealand.
Yeah, and I really liked how they view themselves as a member of the dairy business community in Japan and are collaborating rather than competing with local producers.
If we call it an attitude, it's such a good attitude to have
Mm,
to not want anything to go wrong or haywire with the, dairy industry here, and to be supporting in this way just shows how magnificent Fonterra are at helping other businesses and a country.
I love it. And also, I love that they are helping to move to grass-fed here. So that the current way of doing it, I've seen it with my own eyes, it's not pleasant. And I will be very glad when that has been phased out, is all I have to
Right,
say.
keeping them in sheds, right?
Yes,
And
keeping them in the
knowing that,
sheds.
Tokyo people, for example, wanting to get to the farm because it's open and not inside the
It's
shed,
beautiful
right? It's
rather than
beautiful. Yeah.
rather nasty, which is, yeah, there's one near my parents-in-law's house. And
Oh,
yeah, it's not pretty.
Yeah, this incremental improvements to the farm and the helping the farmers think of a different way. And, there's so many things there, that milk sauna, all of those amazing things that are going on. They're kind of fun. They're making farming fun again.
And, Japanese people love to see animals that we would consider nothing special, like a cow, a
You are
horse,
so
or a
right.
sheep, right?
Yes.
That's like seeing a lion or a tiger or an elephant for them.
Yeah,
It
never
is, it is.
underestimate the
So,
power of a horse.
hey, what could you do in New Zealand to bring more Japanese people to enjoy your cows or your sheep or, yeah, just very usual animals that you have?
I reckon a milk sauna down there at one of those Fonterra farms would be lots of fun. I'm sure it'd be popular.
We have many, many more wonderful jandals coming to you soon. One more episode before the end of the year, so don't worry. And keep listening.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you check out our guests' links in the show notes.
This podcast is brought to you today by Catherine O'Connell Law and Pod Launch with Jane. If you have a great story you think should be on the show, come and find us on LinkedIn or Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.
Mata ne!